And we're live officially as of 1 minute and 11 seconds ago. But I am Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. That is Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. And today we are joined by Nikki Adamkovich, the sassy subber.
I'm something.
It says right there, Nikki.
I know.
The sassy
I did
subber.
it just for you guys. You know, makes
That's
it
good because I'd have forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Let the hashtag sassy start. The tribe will be over shortly.
Oh,
We have one.
I know.
We have one. But let's go ahead and brush through a couple comments here. We have Barb from Minnesota Custom Made. Hello. Miss Cindy King. How are you today? We have Kingsbury Craft, which is Gail. I'm going to really try to remember that, but I'm probably going to forget. And she's watching from Bremerton. I'm not even going to butcher that. I could, but I'm not going to butcher at it. Somewhere in Washington. We have Teresa watching from Las Vegas. Hello. And we have Mary who came in and started with the sassy hashtag. And let's see, we have Crystal, who I know and used to work with Justin. We have Crystal. Hello. It didn't show me any comment, but Catherine is here. And we have Eileen saying hello to everyone. So today we have a fun one. Simplifying artwork, right? Simplifying artwork. I forget the title.
Do you want me to help you out here? Do
Yeah.
you need a little help?
I need the Cliff Notes.
Okay. You know, it always takes a woman to help out these two guys. Anyway, so what it is basically, for those who live under a rock, I am a graphics designer. And I get a lot of questions about how to take my artwork and bring it over into the embroidery world. Well, how do you do that without losing a lot of the integrity of the design? So what I sat down with Jeff and Justin and Matthew was, okay, so what do I have to put into a design, or what do I have to take out to make it a little bit easier on you? You know, the minute details. And it's just kind of the things that from maybe a client's point of view, or even from a designer's point of view, that's going to kind of be eye-opening as to, okay, well, I don't need that much detail because embroidery just doesn't work that way. So this is basically being able to let me ask a lot of questions from a designer's point of view, and maybe that will help when, you know, your clients are approaching you, the kind of questions you need to ask. So
right. A lot of
that
times,
help?
a lot of times, you know, the middleman being the embroiderer that's taking in the orders and sending the designs to the artwork to the digitizer. You know, they're just taking what they're receiving from the customer and sending it to the digitizer. So a lot of the disconnect is if the embroiderer is either new and they're not too familiar with what's going to work with embroidery or not. If they don't have the capabilities for, you know, in-house artwork or an artist in-house to make changes, a lot of times, you know, without me telling the customer, you know, going through the design and naming every single thing that I'm gonna have to eliminate or to change or whatnot, there's a lot of times where I'll just say, hey, the detail in this part of the design is gonna have to be simplified. And a lot of times the question comes up, well, what exactly is going to be changed? And a lot of times it's hard for a digitizer to you know, express exactly every single change that's going to happen without saying, okay, well, I can provide you
without
artwork.
digitizing it.
Yeah, exactly. Without either digitizing it, because as a digitizer, Jeff and I can look at the design and probably see the most obvious things that we're not going to be able to include in the digitizing, especially knowing what size, what garment, and all those factors in it. But there's a lot of times where we may say, okay, make a note, this isn't going to work. And then we're actually going to get into it and start digitizing and make measurements. And we may decide, okay, this detail's going to have to change. This detail's going to have to simplify. But there's a lot of factors in as far as when the digitizer is trying to make those decisions and who he's working with, if they have art capabilities, or even if they want to make the time to actually change the artwork before digitizing. There's time and cost involved with that. And then there's also on the other side of things, like working with projects with something like Nikki doing designs as far as designing, and we're trying to teach her how to design for embroidery for stock design purposes. If it makes the process a little faster as far as if we're getting something exactly to where we're going to digitize it, we don't have to kind of go into that planning process and make decisions as we're digitizing. So there's a couple of different things that
and I got to tell you, from a designer's point of view, it's hard because I'm in the sublimation world. We can put as much detail and gradients and shading as I want. I can get really down to the nitty gritty of putting something inside a window and really making that design pop. And then I'm going to send it over to you, and literally Jeff's going to look at me cross-eyed like, Nick, I can't put that in there. It's too small. And I remember the first time he looked at me, I'm like, why can't you? He goes, you've been in embroidery. You know this. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose all the details. So how far stripping back a design without losing the integrity of the design that you have to go. And I know we use the term simplify, but what is simplified? It's such a broad term. How far back do you have to go? And again, that's working with digitizers who can say, okay, this is not going to work. This is the garment you're putting it on. This is why it's not going to do this, that, or the third. Or can we change this about it? I mean, yes, it's kind of an outline, and that's something that I'm learning, because the more and more I get into this side of it, I'm realizing how simplified is simplified.
Right.
So it's, it's tough I'm going completely into this in a different direction. A lot of times you guys just get artwork sent to you and say, okay, figure it out. And in the meantime, I'm building the artwork.
And that's the majority of the time as a digitizer, I am getting, the middleman being the embroiderer. They're just accepting the artwork they're getting from their end user, and they're sending it to me. And I think the hardest thing is, like I said, when I'm expressing this has to be simplified for it to work, 2.5 inches on a hat, they visually want to see it or want to show their customer what exactly I'm talking about. And that's where it's kind of hard to say, well, I can redesign your design and you're going to be paying artwork charges on top of digitizing charges. But you just got to remember, when a digitizer, like myself, is saying this needs to be simplified, we're thinking in the best case scenario on how it's going to sew and the quality of the digitized embroidery is going to look in the end. And 9 times out of 10, we could probably, Jeff and I, looking at a design and knowing what needs to change, we could probably do the design to the best way we know that's best for embroidery, send it to the embroiderer, they sew it out, and the end results are going to be great, and they're not going to even notice the changes that we make. Right. But I like to be upfront with customers and say, hey, it's not going to look exactly like this. You're not going to see, the 50 stars on the flag at 1 inch wide. It's you're not going to get every single star, something like that. So
yeah, or like when you're doing, like, for example, we're working on Christmas stuff right now, and putting all the details on a Christmas tree. I mean, it depends on the size, and that's a struggle for me, because I want it to be nice and full, and you guys are like, no, bring it back.
But see, there's a difference, because sometimes, you can get away with smaller detail if the color is touching another object of the same color. So let's say like ornaments, right? If you have a relatively large ornament and then you have smaller ornaments chained off of it, you're able to do those smaller ones because you're not doing a trim, because you're jumping into each one, you hit those little smaller elements, and then you tie out on another big element. So sometimes it's just a matter of adjusting the design to where elements like that will actually touch, and it'll help do that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the adjustments may be real simple, or they may be we have to lose a lot of shading and gradients and whatnot when we're working with something that's 2.5 inches tall on a hat. The adjustment may be simple as you have a school mascot that's 3 inches tall with this lettering that's teeny tiny at the bottom. Well, we're just going to change the proportions. That mascot head's going to now be 2 inches tall in order for us to do the word football underneath at a good size that's going to work on a hat and that's readable. So yeah, there's a lot of variations as far as how much we have to change for it to work.
And I didn't realize how much of a thought process went into it until I actually got to sit behind the scenes and watch you guys and then ask the questions. Why can't I do that? Because at least if I'm the person that's got to have a shirt done, right? I don't care. I just want it the way I want it, and I expect you to figure it out, right? I mean, how many of those do you guys get? You know, that kind of thing where, because yeah, I'm building the designs. It's completely different. It's a different conversation. But when it's your client, they don't understand. They don't want to go in and change it. Where you can look at me and say, hey, change it for this, you know, X, Y, and Z reasons. So it runs both sides of the aggravation level, depending on who you're talking to. But, you know, you make it work in the end, I guess. Hello to everybody, by the way.
Sometimes it just, and I've done this, you digitize it at the size that they want it, and you send it to them and say, this is going to be a problem. I'm warning you now. Mm-hmm. And let them actually sew it out at that size and see how big of a problem it is.
Right. And yeah, there's times where, you know, doing this for 28 years, I can pretty much recognize what is and isn't going to work. Right. And if I'm trying to convey that to my customer, they're like, absolutely not. I need it at this size. It's like Jeff said, it's like, okay, I'll do it at that size. But I'm telling you right now, in my opinion, it's not going to work. And when it doesn't work, we could say, okay, can we now make the adjustments that we're suggesting for you?
Right.
And that's why it's so important that you, if you are subbing out digitizing work, that you do find one that, you know, it's not only giving you quality, but you have a good relationship with. Because I love it when my customers that I've been working with, they're like, just do what you need to do. Right. They trust me that it's not that, you know, Jeff and I are like saying, oh, you can't do this, this, and this just because we're lazy and we don't want to do it. We want to make sure that your designs get to sew out the best quality as possible. And we know, including every single detail line, every single small letter as it is in the artwork, the original artwork isn't going to look good. We're going to suggest something different.
Well, yeah. I mean, even as I'm learning, Jeff will message me and say, okay, can I explain this to you? This is why this isn't working today. Okay, fine. I don't always agree with it because in my head it needs to be something else, or I had a different plan for it and you have to go back and forth a billion times. So it doesn't matter if you're the client or if you're the designer, there's still a conversation that has to,
right.
There's a trust factor in there too, you know, so that they're not going to give you a crap product.
Right.
They've got to know their stuff.
And if you are working in a place that like, you know, the situation with Nikki designing specifically for stock designs that we're trying to put out, that's just like best case scenario. That's a designer working with a digitizer, specifically designing designs for us to digitize quickly and efficiently and for the best possible quality. But a lot of times, either embroiderers or bigger promotional companies, they have an in-house artist that actually will either recreate art or actually design logos for people. It's good for them to maybe, you know, have your artist talk to the digitizer you're working with and have him learn these things like Nikki's doing as far as a designer. So when they are doing artwork or they are doing, you know, a custom design, they can keep embroidery in mind, even if they're not doing embroidery at that point. If it is something that they could possibly add, at least give a variation of the design that can be possibly done for embroidery.
Right. Oh, absolutely. We got a lot of good comments here. and I can't click on any one of them. This is what happens when you don't have, the availability here to click on comments.
Kick you out and bring you back in with the admin privileges.
That's all right. I'll just sit
All right. So I'm going to catch up here.
For the love of Peter, did you see what Terry Fulmore wrote right at the bottom?
We'll start here.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. We have Lisa from Ohio. Hello. Catherine from Aurora, Oregon. Hello. Welcome. We have Dustin. Good evening. Ramona from Illinois. Hello. Let's see here.
Hello, Ramona.
I know I have just got here, and it might be what this broadcast is about, but don't you think the person working directly with the end user customer should have some responsibility in knowing what can and not work with embroidery, that those decisions need to be made at the time of the order and not part of a dozen back and forth with the customer? I would agree with that. I think a lot of people, I tend to see more issues with people that are just starting, because they'll take it and they'll say, yep, I can do that. And they'll send it to you and you come back and say, nope, you can't. Right. And they say, but it has to. It has to. And it's like, right. But
it doesn't happen that way.
And it's like, I would say half and half, where those people that are new to embroidery, they're saying, hey, I'm relying on you to tell me and to give me a design that works. But then there's those, like you said, it's like, well, why can't you make it look exactly like this logo that I'm giving you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Keep burning through. We have Suzanne. Hi, friends. We have Cindy King, who says, I'm not sure I agree with all of this. I have seen the phenomenal logos that Jeff and Justin have made. That's practice and
talent, years.
It's not something that just happens. It's something that you have to work at. And when you have something that's extremely small and detailed, it takes a lot more work to try and get it to actually represent what the design is. Right. One of the things, and I don't remember who I heard it from, but you can go to your customer and you can say, all right, here's your logo. It's not going to work for embroidery. What's the most important aspect in your logo that you just have to have? Right. And sometimes it's the stuff that won't work, but other times they'll be like, you know what, let's pull the text off. And now you've just gained another half of an inch and it can get larger. And they'll say, remove this. We just want this for the brand recognition. Mm-hmm. And so it helps. And the other part of that is educating your customer by saying, well, you have a shirt with full print on the back of your company's name. You have the Left Just logo, again, with your company's logo screen printed in the name. And now you want a hat with all of that. Let's just do your logo, because you're already all sorts of logoed out with the phone numbers and stuff that they need. I've never read a phone number off a hat personally. No. I won't. I've put a phone number on a hat, but I've never read one off of it. What is it that Eric says? He says, coordinate, not replicate.
Yes.
Yeah. Not everything has to be exactly the same in a uniform or
it's within the same theme. It's you're making sure that when you're doing your brand, it either it's showing off the color, and I make a lot of brand logos, so you want to show off either the color or the logo itself, or maybe just the name, something simplified version, so that it kind of just all blends together, right, in a greater picture. So.
Yep, and I'm going to jump down some comments here. We have Barb saying, tell customers they may not get details when the graphic goes to a digitizer, and if they feel there needs to be more concessions on the design part for the embroidery, I expect to have a dialogue, which, absolutely. I want to say one of the things that I've seen more recently is a globe with the grid lines on it, right? Mm-hmm. And you drop out every other grid line because you can't put them in, but then you have it there and it looks like it's supposed to, but you're missing some grid lines.
Right.
There you go. Now I lost my place. We have
Dawn, who says, Dawn, hey Sassy, that's where you're at. I got you.
Where we're at. All right. We have
I got you.
Marissa from South California. Nikki would like to know what you're playing with there. Terry would like to know what you're playing with, Nikki.
Justin's tool, of course, because everybody knows I love Justin's tool. Just gotta tell you.
Thank you.
They've been dying to have me say that for probably the last week. And yeah. Anywho.
There you go. I have 2. It's my
I have a whole handful, but that's all besides the point. And if you want, you could go watch that promo I did on my TikTok. That's funny.
Now I need to be holding one since.
Are you jealous?
Yep. So Ramona says graphic artists that creates for embroidery need to learn the rules of embroidery. And that's a lot of what this conversation is going to be, is that, this is what can and can't happen. Thread has a thickness, and no matter what you do, it's always going to have a thickness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But we have Claire saying sassy. Ramona says those new users make promises you can't keep. And that's usually when I get the most pushback, when it's somebody that's new and they've never really dealt with having something that wouldn't work. Cindy says, it must be the cheerleader in me. Everything has to match. Could be.
Sort of. There's a cheerleader in me too, but that it doesn't have to match. It just all has to go together, It doesn't have to matchy.
So we have one of Nikki's designs. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to pull it up.
Really, what was the reason of bringing me in here, right? So let's talk about it. Oh, we went to that one. All right.
I'll take it back.
Well, that's one of my signature designs, so go for it. So from a designer's point of view, there's a lot of details in there. And in particular, I was having a conversation with Jeff about it, and I said, well, what about the ladybug on the nose? And he goes, yeah, we're going to get rid of that. I go, but it's supposed to be on the nose. He goes, that's great, but if it's 2 inches tall, it ain't gonna work. So unless this is something that's gonna be, what would we figure had to be over 5 inches or 5-6 inches in order for you to even have that on there?
So really it comes down to the measurements, and this size, that could go on there. But it kind of runs into that whole color thing, because you're gonna have one tie in and tie out there, one tie in and tie out there, one tie in and tie out there, and the same on the wings. And now all of a sudden you've got 10 knots stacked on top of each other on the back side of the embroidery, and you're going to put that against your skin, and it's going to feel like a horn right there against your skin.
Right.
So it may be at a size that's sewable, but the number of knots that are going to be on the backside is going to be uncomfortable to wear.
Right. And not only that, measuring and saying, okay, this is, a millimeter plus thickness, I can technically do a satin stitch with that element. But you zoom in there and you got the wings that are shaded. You have dots on the red part. You have the little tiny legs. So even if we were to get 2 white pieces, 2 red pieces, and a black dot in the middle, it's not going to look like a ladybug.
No.
Yeah. So
I mean, and that's where
we just rip that thing off the nose.
Right. It just totally, and you know what? And from my point of view, it's like, okay, but I just had all this hard work making it, and you're about to rip apart my design, and I can't get upset about it. So,
so in this instance, it's not even just thinking, all right, how do I design this for embroidery? But you need to remember what the end size is going to be and what's its use.
Right.
Because if we're trying to go 2.5, 3 inches tall, that's not going to work. But if you are looking to do this in something that's larger, bigger on a towel or something like that, then yeah, there's a chance that we can include an element like that.
Right. And that's just having the communication with your digitizer as to all the questions that need to be answered. That's why you have a form that you got to fill out. And I actually did fill out one of his forms, and there was about a bajillion questions in there, none of which I could answer, but I know the conversation could have started because of it.
Right.
So.
And I mean, technically, if you blew this up to 9 inches tall and you put it on a jacket back, you'd get a lot more of the detail.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But
that's with anything.
2 weeks to sew it out.
You would be asking if we can make it as an applique real quick.
Well, there is that. But like some of the things, you've got 3 shades. It took my mind.
It's weird it came in that way, because it doesn't come in that way on my end, which is just weird.
Well, we like it.
Because I have it as a gradient, and that just goes to show you what the gradient looks like. That's supposed to be a gradient in there.
And that and right there alone, depending on the file type and what software it was built in, and what software you're bringing it into, as far as artwork, or depending on the file type, bringing into your digitizing software, there are times where gradients it'll actually, if the gradient set to a certain amount of colors to that gradient, it'll actually come in like blocks
and stacked like that. It looks stacked. Yeah.
Okay. So that's another thing too. There's a lot of tricks and stuff as far as trying to open things. Adobe users, I don't know if Corel has masks, but Adobe users, there's this thing called mask where it's like, if you open it in a certain way, or if you import it a certain way, it can completely look different than what the end product should have been, or the original artwork should have been. So those are things you got to be careful with too, as far as working with artists and designers, as far as how they send it to you.
Yeah. And see, so I think this is a really good example of something that can actually be a communication thing. Is I can honestly tell you, I would do that nose as one color, just straight one satin stitch, because I'm going to get the light and the shadow off of the underlay that I put in there. How much it raises it up, and so those little shading things like this, that's just going to naturally happen with the thread on the garment. And so it's not necessarily something that you have to put a lot of time and effort into, knowing that when we throw that as a stitch on a garment, you're going to see the light and shadow automatically, versus trying to, if I tried to put 3 colors in there, it's not going to look.
It's going to look more like a bullseye.
Right.
And you don't want that either. That's another thing you have to think about. When people are stitching out, they're going to pick whatever color they want. So how odd and awkward is that going to look? You can say this is what it'll be stitched out in, but let's be honest for a second.
Right.
Still going to do whatever they want. So
you got to remember, digitizing is an interpretation of a design to put into an embroidery format. As a designer, graphic designers, they're going to go line for line of whatever it is that they're going for, especially people that are in like engineering type CAD work. Their whole job is being precise. You have to make sure that every line is in the right place. You start getting into a little bit more, designing and coming up with your own designs, like cartoons and stuff like that. You have a little bit more leeway as far as variations and whatnot, how much shading you want to be, how cartoony you want it to look, how real you want it to look.
The drop shadows and everything, and all that artistic stuff that I can add, because in sublimation I can.
Exactly.
So as I'm working on the crossover of my designs and whatnot, you got to cut it back, you got to strip it back, but still not lose what that is.
Right. And even in the print world, doing something like sublimation, or the new popular DTF transfers and what like that, they're not worried about the number of colors being used, because it's pretty much every color is available in that.
But if you have it, if I were to have that done as a screen print transfer, you would have, and that's it. That's all a part of the whole, apparel printing process, no matter if it's embroidery or if it's screen print, direct to film. There's so many options for us, but again, sometimes you have to strip it back in order for it to work for whatever it is. So.
Yeah, exactly. So even in the print world, you go from sublimation to screen printing. That screen printer is now going to, if they're going to do something like this, it may go to a 4-color process depending on the type of garment and color. Or if they're going to do a spot color, they're going to be like, well, we can do an 8-color spot color, and you're going to be paying for 8 screens and the number of colors.
Right. As you watch the dollar signs just keep adding up and adding up.
Exactly.
But that's, again, where you guys and not necessarily you two, but the people watching, that's where you got to have the communication with your designer, and you got to have communication with your digitizer. And yeah, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag because Justin already did. So I might as well just dive right in. So, so I'm teaming up with the Embroidery Nerds, and they are going to be the exclusive digitizers for all of my designs. And I have over 3,000 designs in my shop. So they're working with me, and I'm working with them, as to figure out, okay, what do I have to go in and strip back and say, all right, I need to take that out of the design, or, have them come to me and go, yeah, Nick, it's not going to work. And it's a lot of learning on my end too, because I'm so detail orientated that it's just, I need to have all the detail. And they're like, no. So, if you guys are in my group, and you are in the embroidery stuff, now all of my designs of various sorts will be able to be digitized by those two. So, it's a lot of learning for all of us. I know Justin can teach me because he's been in the industry, for about a bajillion years. So, it's just one of those things that it's helping me get to the groundwork, and it's a lot of late nights being up and just learning. So there you go. Now you know the know. So that's one of my big adventures, is teaming up with them guys, or these guys, I should say, and making it happen and stuff like this, and make the cute stuff. So
you don't necessarily have to peel things back.
Right.
We can look at this design and we can tell you what's not going to be in the design. And if
Right.
it compromises the integrity of the design to a point that you're not comfortable with it, then that's where that other conversation can happen. But
Right.
I mean,
Right.
if you were designing this for embroidery, you could go like this and just type out braided hair. And now you don't need to draw all that shading in there. You just draw the straight braid lines, and it's good for embroidery, because we're not going to be able to put all that shading in unless it's massive. So
Right.
if your goal is to put it on the jacket back, then more of that detail can come in there. But for just doing straight embroidery, you can just literally draw a little line and be like, I want this to be there.
And there is some times where, having it something like this where, yeah, of course, we're not going to see the 3 or 4 different colors of shading in those braids,
But you can change the direction, though.
but giving it to us like this, and not just lined art where everything's just outlined in black to give you definition. Because if you give me this design and all those braids are outlined in black, I'm going to give you a design that has running stitch outlines in black. But giving it to me like this is telling me I want to see those braids, but I want them to be subtle. So yes, we're going to use stitch directions and different elements of satins, depending on how big this is. Different pieces of satin that's going to, hit the light differently. That's going to show you those braids without giving you that hard outline,
Right.
stroke on it. So,
and things like these flowers, one petal is probably going to become 2 petal, or 2 petals are probably going to become 1 petal.
right.
So you're going to lose just kind of the numbers. But really, when I look at a design like this, my main concern goes to the dots on every ladybug. Those in the back.
But that's what you can do. You can take out the dots in the back of, with her shirt. That doesn't have to be there. And the dots on the ladybug, it's all a matter of perspective. I mean, do you have to have them? Well, not necessarily. I mean, you can, but it might just look like a red blob if it's too tiny.
Right.
So you gotta take that into consideration as well. So, it might be one of those conversations where you look at me and go, can we just put the yellow center of the daisy instead of the sunflower, or the ladybugs there? And can we just do a bigger ladybug on top of the hat so you really get to see it more? And yeah, you are altering the design, but that I'm giving you the rights to do that and say, okay,
Right.
make this work in what we want it for. So, I mean, at least it's an outline, it's a guide, for a creative design. So.
Right. Exactly.
Lots of conversations, and people don't realize how much, from a designer's point of view, goes into having you guys digitize one of my designs. It's a lot of back and forth, as I'm learning, because eventually I plan on doing fonts for you guys to digitize those. Jeff and I have been working on Halloween applique designs. I don't even remember. I've sent you so much stuff that I can't remember what I'm doing anymore. But you don't have all 3,000 designs that I have? Why not?
Well, see, generally when I load a design in, there's, let's see if I can remember even how to do this. Instant smart design. Problem solved. I think I just killed my software. To be honest with you.
That's going to be sitting there calculating for. Oh yeah, there you go. There's perfectly digitized design.
It's only 86 colors. I think that's what it's telling me here. It said it's 86 colors.
Oh, that's a hot mess.
70 something colors.
That's
That's a hot mess.
That's auto digitizing for you.
Yep. It's
And do you have digitizers? That's all they ever do. That's how they digitize it. They don't go in and tweak it and fix it and make it look right, because that's a hot mess from a designer's point of view.
That is a $5 1 hour design.
It most definitely is. I mean,
And
it's
from my point
5
of view,
inches
I would
tall
be
and 60,000 stitches.
I would be ticked if that's what a digitizer sent me as something. Oh, hey, this is what I felt your design looked like. Again,
Right.
there's a trust factor here that you're not going to make my designs look like crap. So,
Well, and
Exactly.
for somebody that's new, that has never done embroidery before, they'll send this in, they'll get this back, and they'll put it on their machine, and they'll hate life for a while.
I hate life looking at it. I don't even have to stitch it out.
I can tell you, honestly, my machine runtime, what the software is calculating, is 2 hours and 47 minutes on a 5-inch design.
Oh, okay.
And that's on a machine that's going to do its own color changes, not sitting at a single needle and changing the 75 colors however many times that it's going to have you change them to get that in. And so that's why the artistic interpretation comes in. That's just a hot mess.
That's just ugly. Oh, that's ugly.
Yeah.
It's like not even in the right direction on some of those.
So if I bounce this back to scale, this is what it would actually be on my screen. This is exactly 5 inches because I've calibrated my monitor to it. Yeah.
No, thank you, sir. Can we try again? Because that's not pretty. And I like pretty. So
There we
well,
go.
then it's going to take a little longer.
But those are the things you have to work on. I mean, aren't you working? Can you pull up the butterfly one that you were
Hold on. See, look, Crystal says, but look at all the time I just saved.
And you know what? I would probably never design for you ever again if that were the case. I'd be like, I do not want you to be representing me as my. Nope, sorry. Thank you. Come again. Nope. I work too hard.
Justin just sits there and grins because he's like, I've had people send me files like this. Can you fix this?
And looking at the situation where a new embroiderer is, the very few places that they get the information as far as where they get digitizing from. They might get it from a machine manufacturer that kind of has a group on Facebook that has a list. Or they go to these groups and they join the groups that are flooded with these scammers and spammers and stuff. And they say, hey, I need a digitizer. And they get 50 of them answering them within 30 seconds. And they're offering them for $5. And then they go to a legitimate digitizer that might be charging $25, $30. And they say, well, why would I pay, 5 times as much to them when I can get it over here for $5? And they don't understand that there is a huge difference in quality and how much planning goes into a design that actually is going to work efficiently on your machine. So yeah, there is a lot of times where like Jeff said, someone may get a design like that. They just spent $5, $10. And then somebody says, hey, go talk to Justin. And they send me this file like, oh, what's wrong with this? And a lot of times, right, the fix is throw it away, let me start over, and I'll do it right for you the first time. So
right. And you also, what they're not putting into consideration is how much time it's going to tie up that machine. Whereas if you go in and you painstakingly go in and fix that hot mess that was there, it obviously, one, is going to run better. Two, it's probably going to be less time. You're going to go in and take out the things that just can't work and make it look clean. And that's the thing. You want it to look clean. And then you, as the person stitching out, feel successful and feel like, okay, I am handing out my client a quality product. You got to buy quality to get quality to sell quality. And people just don't. I just don't understand when you can go get it for $5. Yeah, that's great, but
so that $20, $25 that you just saved once is going to probably cost you hundreds of dollars in production time lost every time you run that job. The aggravation,
the material you're going to use,
the possible wear and tear on the machines, because if it's really bad, you're going to start getting needle breaks and whatnot. So yeah, just kind of thinking of it that way is that's kind of where I preach to people when they're talking about prices. Yes, but I've worked on machines for many, many years. I've operated machines. I understand what's going to be the best for your quality, your efficiency, what's best for your machine, what's best for your operators. So all that is priceless, and you're only paying, like I said, $20, $25 more than that cut rate person that you're just getting a design that has stitches in it, and they call it digitizing.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, too, like, it has to look good, but it also has to feel good when you wear it. It has to have a good hand to it, and you can pay some. I mean, I could send this to a couple of people that they would make it look good, but it would feel like a sheet of cardboard.
Right.
And ultimately, when you're picking a digitizer to do your embroidery, you're staking your reputation on their work.
Right.
You're saying, I know how to operate the machine, but it could very well turn bad for you. You could lose a job, and then you've got the word of mouth that goes out with that. So you might be losing a lot more than just production time and run time and product.
All right. I want to answer Cindy's question. She says, do you have an embroidery machine? The big guys always say, run the designs for a while to see what the machine can do. So fun fact, it's going to make you cringe in about a hot second. So I've had my embroidery machine 10 plus years, and I have, don't cringe, but it's a Singer Futura. And I had to babysit. It was a single needle. I didn't know any different, and I literally was self-taught. I'm in the process of getting a big girl machine. So we're working on that part of it, but I also never want to digitize a day in my life. I have sat and watched the two of them do it, and I'm like, yep, no, I have the attention span of a slug when it comes to that. So no, but I will sit for hours in design. So I have my strengths, they have theirs, but as for me stitching out, it's a frustrating process with the machine that I have. So it just sits on the shelf currently. So there's your answer.
We did get it to where you could walk away from it for a little bit.
I did. I was able to sit across the room, But again, there's so many things that people don't realize, especially for newbies. And I'm going to totally hijack here for a second because it's something that we've talked about. So as a newbie, I was not really into the groups at the time. You want to shrink all that down, buddy?
I'm working on it. Pushing all the wrong buttons.
So I didn't know all the things. I didn't know the right thread to use. I didn't know anything. You literally go into this completely blind. And at the time that I was doing it, Facebook really wasn't overly big in my world. So I didn't have the place to go look and find all these answers. Whether they were good, bad, or ugly, I still couldn't find those answers. So I just literally flew by the seat of my pants and just kept running going. Was I successful at it? Yes. Did I end up hating embroidery? Yep. So I took a break from it. I took a nice long 8-year break from it, dug out my embroidery machine, nearly put it in the middle of the road about 2 weeks ago because it frustrated me so badly. But, it's up, it is running, but I definitely need a bigger machine because this one needle thing is for the birds. And I don't know how home users can just crank out as much as they can with just a single needle because it's frustrating. So
I still think you should office space that thing out in a field. Baseball bat.
Right there.
I remember early on in my digitizing career, I was kind of thrown into the big boy crowd when it came to machines. I started at a place that was running 6 heads and Tajimas and whatnot.
Right.
So embroidery in my brain wasn't this small looking sewing machine looking thing. And so I digitized someone that, was a home embroiderer, and their reaction to me digitizing for them was, no, I want all the red to sew first. I want all the black to sew second. And I'm like, why in the world would you want that? I'm trying to digitize this in a way where registration is going to be properly done And they're like, I have one needle. I have to change the thread out every single time. And my mind was blown. I'm like, one needle?
There was nothing more frustrating. I did 90 shirts with a single needle machine, and there was 7 color changes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we won't even. That was a struggle. But you know what? People start somewhere. Everybody starts somewhere, and that's the thing. And eventually I will. Eventually I will.
And even then, limitations, something like that as the embroiderer, and if you are either designing logos yourself or talking to your end customer, you're going to want to even say, hey, I can't do something that has 15 colors because it's just not cost effective. Or if you are designing, you're going to design something that's layered in a way where if it is multiple colors, you're only having to change out that color once. So,
right. I'm working on applique designs right now just because I love doing applique designs. But that's very much home user.
Right.
And so I'm looking at it in a simplified yet keeping it cute version, I guess is the best way to, yes, will I get into some more complex stuff? Absolutely. But for right now, while I'm still learning, I'm learning terminology. I'm learning, how you guys are going to lay it all out, and just sitting here watching. And I do a lot of that learning, watching you guys behind the scenes. So it's key. I mean, it's key to have a good designer and one that can work with a digitizer who knows what the hell they're doing. So, get all those, those perfect pieces together, and you as the middleman to the end user, right, it's going to be successful. So,
right.
Nothing will make your life easier than saying, it's got a lot of detail in it. Let me check and make sure that can be ordered, or that can be done like that. And I'll get back to you if there needs to be any changes versus, yep, I'll throw that on a hat. No problem.
Right. I always tell everybody, let me check with my design team first. Give me, a day or so to get back to you, because again, you guys have to come to, us to say, hey, will this work? Can you take this out? Jeff says this isn't going to work. Justin's thinking I'm absolutely crazy, whatever it may be. Can you redesign this a little bit? Yeah. And that's the beautiful part of it. But that's the one thing you should always say, let me go check with my design team. And if you don't even have a design team and you're the one designing it, give yourself the grace to just kind of really pull back and look at it to make sure, I didn't say yes, because I really need to look at this and see how this works. So
I gotta use that one. Let me check with my design team.
Go check with my design team. That has been my go-to answer I've been in business now for over 15 years. And that has been my go-to. Let me check with my design team. And it allows for you just to pull back before you make that shotgun response. And it saved me a lot from saying yes and then going back at them like, what, my design team says we need to do this, that, or third. They don't know that I'm only a one-person show here, right? But they think I've got this huge office. So use that. It helps slow you down a little bit too. Not everything is so pressing it needs to be done in 2 minutes. So
and there's a lot of times too where you add another element into this, like 3D puff, where everybody thinks any design can be done in 3D puff. And there's one particular customer that's relatively new to me, does a lot of sporting goods stuff for, I don't know if they're just leagues or high schools and stuff. And almost every single one of his designs has one element or something that has puff in it. And he's been sending it to me and saying, hey, can this be done in puff? What element can be done in puff? And that type of communication, instead of just saying to every one of his end customers, yeah, I could do puff. And they're sending this design that's just, 20,000 stitches on a hat. And they want every element to be 3D puff. He's having that communication with me and saying, like, can that be, what elements? And there's only been a few times where I've just told him straight out, it's this design is not going to lend well to puff at all, let alone embroidery. If it was just straight flat embroidery, I'm still going to have to simplify this, and this. But as far as puff, there's just not an element in this design that's going to be puff. So, so yeah, even adding something like that, there's definitely that communication that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to have that. Put the people in your wheelhouse that you know you're going to be successful with, and stick with it. Don't bounce from digitizer to digitizer,
Right.
because you guys don't all digitize the same way, and you're not
No.
going to get the same kind of quality. So you find one, you stick with them. If you like their quality of work, you like the time, their whole package that they have, then you stick with it and don't switch.
And there's going to be times where, like, if that same customer went to me and Jeff, and he said, I want this design in puff, I would say 95% of what Jeff and I are going to answer to him as far as what can and can't be done is going to be the same. But how it's digitized, I guarantee you it's going to probably be 50% different from mine. The general rules are going to be followed as far as Jeff and I, but ours are going to be different. And not to say that one's going to be better than the other. It's just going to be done differently in the way that Jeff likes to do it. He approaches it. If you want it super flat looking, you'll go to Jeff.
I knew that was coming. I was waiting. I was really waiting.
If you want some dimension, you go to me. But one's not wrong, one's not right. So, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Poor Jeff is over here getting confused. I was waiting. I was like, so if you want to, you want a higher, I don't want to say quality, but if you want,
and believe me, there's times where someone will send a design, and my knee jerk reaction is they send a design to me and they're like, "Can you do this 3D puff on a hat?" And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I'll even like message Jeff. I'm like, "Look what somebody wants to do 3D on the hat," and we'll laugh about it. And then I'll actually sit down and be serious, and I'll look at it. And I'm like, all right. Let's look at this. What can be done, puff on a hat, without completely losing the integrity of the design? And then
I mean, sometimes it's those super narrow columns that, guess what? There is no puff when you do super narrow columns.
Right.
It pulls it down too much. You've lost the whole effect, and you've just put in a lot more stitches and a lot more work. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the good things about having a good line of communication. There are some digitizers that you can send something with a really thin text and say, "I want this in puff," and they'll digitize it in puff, and they'll send it back to you and it'll run like crap on your machine. Or you send it to somebody, they'll go, "I'm going to advise against that, and this is why." Right. Not just no, but usually there's and this is why that follows that up.
Right.
Cindy makes a good point. If you want to bring up hers, it says, bottom line, who will be the buyers of your design? Is it focused on home style embroidery or commercial? And you know what? For me, it's going to be whoever says, "Hey, can you do this, that, or the third?" But for you, where's your market? That's your question. Where's your market? Are you want to deal with the onesies, twosies? Do you want, or the home embroidery? You have to figure that out. It's not something we can figure out, but it's definitely something you have to think about. Or maybe you want to just deal with the schools. Maybe you want to deal with commercial businesses. That's something you have to answer. And then you come to people like us, and then we help you with the rest of the process. So those are questions you have to ask when you start your business. What's the direction you want to go in? And yes, it will evolve. Yes, you will pivot probably 18 times to only come back to the beginning one, because that's where you are the happiest. But you have to decide that first coming out of the gate, especially with embroidery, because it's a huge market. And yes, you can make money in it, but not everybody can get in with the schools. Not everybody can get in with the local businesses. So you figure out what you like and go from there.
Yep. I mean, honestly, when I do stock designs, I target both. There's the home and there's the commercial. Because I can look at the design and I can say, "Oh, that's going to sell in the home market, and that's not going to sell in the commercial market."
And another thing you gotta remember too, the print side of the industry, scaling designs. A lot of times it's just a matter of especially vector. Scaling vector artwork, you can go up and down. You can do a left chest design that's 3 inches, blow it up to 11 inches in the back. Same amount of colors, no biggie. But as digitizing, if you are wanting it to use it in multiple uses in applications, something on a hat that's 2.5 inches tall is going to have a lot less detail than something that's bigger on a towel or on a sweatshirt or on a jacket back.
Right.
So it's just not one size fits all type of thing where there is times where someone may say, I want a left chest and a jacket back. Well, the left chest is going to be real simplified, no shading. Details going to be simplified. It's not going to have every single line in detail in there. But to the jacket back, oh yeah, I'm going to get as much shading as possible. I'm going to get a lot of detail in there.
Right. I am reading their comments too. No, I completely understood. And here's the I completely understood the question. The answer, I did answer it. I'm doing both. So here's the deal. I'm just the designer. Jeff and Justin will be the ones selling my work. So they're going to have some that are for the home market, and they're going to have some for the commercial market. It's really going to be up to them. They're going to come to me and say, hey, can you do this, that, or the third? And I'm going to design for whatever they need. So for an example, Jeff and I are working on applique. That's pretty much for the home user right now. I have a couple fonts that I'm looking at doing, and that will be more for the commercial market. So it's really going to be driven by what they're looking for, because they're going to be the only digitizers that will be allowed to sell my artwork. And I'm exclusive. So, with me exclusively working with them, it's really what their needs are and what they want to add to their stock collection. So it's not my stock collection, it's theirs. And they're building their collection of what they want to do. So it's really just what they want. I completely understood your question though. I apologize if you think I didn't.
And not even it's not even just a hard division as far as home users, as far as the type of machines they have. There's a lot of commercial embroiderers out there that might be running 8 heads that do a lot of applique, because that's the crowd that they go for, or they produce a lot of trinkets and stuff that they sell in their Etsy stores, and a lot of throw pillars, something like that, where they're still using those kind of home style designs, but they're running it on a commercial machine. So that's where, Jeff and I, as trying to build our stock design collection, we need to decide, is this geared towards the home market? And not only is it, Nikki coming up with a design that's going to work for embroidery, period, and her, her focus on that, but also our brains have to go to, all right, is this going to be something that's geared towards the commercial
right
embroiderer?
Yes, it's for their collection. So I'm just like the middleman, I guess, or the back office. I'm the nerdy back office. There you go. That's where I am. But yes, so it'll help them to build up their collection, and be able to have access to my designs that I already have and create them over in the embroidery world, because I've had that question a lot. And I've been approached by numerous digitizers, and it's taken me a while to be able to find digitizers, one, that I connected with, and that I felt like I'm comfortable enough to handing over my hard-earned work, over to them and saying, okay, now you get to go and sell it. So, because, mine's made for physical products. So this it's a sassy nerdy nation right here. Back office nerdy. Yes, I'm back office nerdy. I'm actually nerdette, but whatever. We can go with it.
Okay. Well, I mean, we could go on another hour, I'm sure. But we're actually coming up on the hour, which is surprising because it went by really quick. But yeah.
We could bring this into a part 2 next week. I have no problem with that. I think we can keep on going, and we could actually start getting into possibly, we kind of talked all around what we need to do, and maybe next week we can look at this gnome design, and Jeff and I can actually talk into the digitizing aspects of things and on how we would approach a design like that. So
yeah, I think it's a good thing. So now you know, and you're all in the know now.
because I let it slip.
Hashtag Justin.
There you go. All right. Well, I think we're at a good stopping point now. So we'll just plan on part 2ing this next week. But for now,
look at you guys being prepared already.
There you go. That is Nikki Adamkovich, the Sassy Subber. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. And I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works, and we are all here representing the Embroidery Nerd. I'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.